8:47 a.m. The peak of the morning rush hour in the iron bowels of the city. 1,000 architects of their own mundane, fragile lives are packed into a pressurized steel tube, screaming through the dark, oxygen-deprived arteries of the metropolis. The air inside car number 642 is a thick, suffocating cocktail of expensive espresso, designer cologne, and the stale, recycled breath of a middle class that desperately believes it is in control of its destiny. But in the far corner, right next to the sliding doors stained with the greasy grime of 1,000,000 failed transit cycles, the motherboard of reality has just suffered a catastrophic, irreversible failure. Look at him. Or rather, look at the biological wreckage that used to inhabit that shell before the user was permanently deleted. This is what the headlines call the subway demon, but the name is a pathetic human attempt to romanticize a mechanical disaster. There is nothing supernatural here. It is a purely industrial accident. It is the result of a 2 milligram chemical hack known as Tranq, a heavy-duty veterinary sedative that has no business being in a human motherboard, yet here it is, executing its final terminal command. The figure is hunched forward in a grotesque, impossible angle that defies the laws of spinal integrity, his back curved like a rusted scrap of rebar pulled from a demolition site. He is caught in the vertical void, that liminal, agonizing space between standing and collapsing, where gravity seems to have granted a temporary, cruel exception for the damned. His head is tilted sharply, his eyes visible through the jagged cracks of a dirt-stained hockey mask, the AAOXI3 signature of a world that no longer possesses the dignity to be seen. The domestic virus has finished its primary installation. It didn't start here, in the screeching metal dark of the subway. It started in the deceptive, suffocating safety of a quiet, lonely bathroom 3 hours ago. The user sat there on the edge of a stained tub, staring at a small packet wrapped in neon orange electrical tape, thinking he was making a calculated choice. He wasn't. The decision had already been made by the molecular predator that has been silently rewriting his BIOS for months by bit. The moment that reagent touched his bloodstream, the architect was officially uninstalled. His frontal cortex, the seat of his will, his long-term dreams, and his faded memories of his mother's voice was moved to the system trash bin. The synthetic ghost took the helm, and it only has one directive: find the node. Now he stands among the architects of the city. A high-level executive in a $3,000 charcoal suit recoils in primal, instinctive disgust, his face a flickering mask of bourgeois horror. A woman in a clean, white winter coat tries to press herself further into the sweating crowd, as if physical distance could protect her from the visual rage standing 3 feet away. The smell of the train, the sharp ozone of the tracks, and the damp wool of the passengers is suddenly dominated by a new, terrifying scent: the chemical rot. It is the smell of a biological organism that has forgotten how to circulate its own blood. It is the scent of necrosis, of flesh that has been promoted to a state of decay while still attached to a living frame. The train jolts violently, a shudder of steel against steel that sends normal passengers stumbling, but the figure in the mask doesn't flinch. His fight or flight response has been uninstalled, removed to save processing power for the chemical loop. He is a biological statue. To the crowd, he is an obstacle, a glitch in their morning commute, an eyesore that needs to be deleted from their field of vision. Someone in the crowd, fueled by a mixture of visceral fear and self-righteous safe-distance arrogance, reaches out with a plastic bottle of water. He pours it over the masked head, a pathetic, ritualistic attempt to wash away the infection, to treat the human being like a piece of dirty sidewalk. The water runs down the dirty plastic of the mask, dripping onto the floor in rhythmic thuds. But the subway demon doesn't even blink. One dilated pitch-black pupil, a literal black hole where a soul and a future used to reside, stares directly through the camera lens of the world, reflecting an abyss that the clean, well-fed crowd cannot even begin to calculate. The status bar has reached 0%, the user is deleted, and the motherboard is melting. The train screams to a halt at 42nd Street, but the doors don't just open for passengers. They open a portal to the hive. As the crowd pours out in a frantic, panicked wave, trying to escape the proximity of the glitch, they find that the platform is already occupied by a deeper darkness. This is not an isolated incident. This is not a single error. This is a mass system failure, a pandemic of the motherboard. Everywhere you look, under the flickering, sickly fluorescent lights that hum with a low-frequency, nerve-grating anxiety, there are more of them. Hooded figures, folded in the dark, standing in that same rhythmic, agonizing Tranq Lean, like a forest of charred trees in a winter that never ends. This is the primal grounding of the 21st century wasteland. The hierarchy is no longer defined by the numbers in your bank account or the title on your business card. It is defined by your proximity to the rot. The hive mind of the frozen shadows has taken over the station. Normal people, the architects who still believe their BIOS is intact, scurry past like frantic, blind ants, their eyes glued to their own digital screens, desperate to ignore the biological reality surrounding them. They treat these people like architectural debris, like rusted oil drums or piles of wet, stinking trash, left behind by a civilization that no longer knows how to clean itself. On the far side of the platform, you see a man in a tattered, oil-stained jacket, crouching on the grime-covered tiles. He isn't resting. He is vibrating on a frequency of pure chemical terror that the human ear cannot hear, but the human gut can feel. He is throwing crumpled pieces of a discarded fast food wrapper at the feet of another node, a pathetic animalistic gesture of territoriality, or perhaps a corrupted, fragmented memory of what social interaction used to be. There is no empathy here. Empathy requires a functional motherboard and a surplus of dopamine, and these units are running on legacy code, pure, unadulterated, raw instinct. Paranoia is the only operating system left. Every distant, echoing siren from the street above, every sharp shout of a transit cop, every flash of a tourist's camera is a gunshot to their compromised, fraying nervous systems. The visual rage of the scene is absolute and uncompromising. You see the skin on their exposed necks, the color of wet concrete or oxidized lead, waxy and translucent, revealing the dark, stagnant veins beneath that have stopped carrying life. The flesh-eating plague is not a metaphor or a headline. It is a mechanical, inevitable process of necrosis. Xylazine, the horse tranquilizer, constricts the blood vessels so tightly that the skin begins to starve for oxygen. It dies while the host is still standing. It rots while they are still watching the world through their dilated, vacant pupils. They are the walking dead, but without the cinematic drama or the Hollywood makeup. Just the cold, quiet, industrial reality of biological waste being processed by time. As the next express train screams into the station, the violent wind it creates stirs the tattered hoods and amplifies the scent of decay. For a brief, agonizing second, you see the reflection of the entire city, the skyscrapers, the luxury stores, the millions of people who think they are safe in that one dead pupil of our signature character. You see the fragile architecture of civilization, and you realize with a jolt of horror that it is all built on the very edge of this void. The subway demon isn't an outsider. He is the future that the system is currently rendering in the background. The crowd continues to pour water, to throw food, to film the misery on their high-definition smartphones, believing they are the objective observers of a tragedy. They are wrong. They are participants in a mass defragmentation. The architect of the city is watching his empire crumble bit by bit, neuron by neuron, and all he can do is watch the status bar of humanity hit critical. The forest of frozen shadows is growing, and its roots are made of the very concrete we walk on every day. The loop is tightening, and the scent of the rot is now the only truth left in the dark. The air inside the subway car has thickened into a viscous, unbreathable sludge of industrial ozone, cold sweat, and the unmistakable sweetish tang of biological failure. Your body is no longer a temple. It is a crime scene where the evidence is being methodically liquidated by a molecular hitman. Every single nerve ending in your extremities is firing off a chaotic, dissonant symphony of biological alarms, triggered by a core temperature that is plummeting toward the event horizon of hypothermia. But the parasite nestled in your prefrontal cortex has effectively cut the wires to the alarm system. You are freezing. Your internal organs are beginning to prioritize their own survival, pulling the blood away from your skin, leaving your surface cold, waxy, and dead. The architect inside is screaming, pounding his fists against the reinforced glass of your consciousness, begging you to move, to run, to find a heat source, anything to stop the encroaching darkness. But the synthetic ghost is the one holding the master keys to your motor functions, and it whispers in a voice smoother than spilled oil and colder than the vacuum of space. Just 5 more minutes. Lean into the vibration of the train. The void is where you belong now. The pain you feel is just the last of the old code being deleted. Stay. You are almost home. This is the ultimate primordial betrayal. Your own biology, a masterpiece of millions of years of brutal, uncompromising evolution designed to keep you from the jagged edge of the abyss, has been hijacked. Your hardware is now actively conspiring with the enemy to ensure your destruction. You feel the cold sweat on your forehead under the rim of the hockey mask turning into a jagged sheet of ice. Yet you remain perfectly motionless, a biological monument erected in a graveyard of human will. You find yourself praying to the flickering, yellowed advertisements on the subway walls, as if they were a distant, forgotten pantheon of gods from a previous life you can no longer fully remember. You try to visualize the divine luxury of your apartment, the click of the radiator, the scent of clean laundry, the simple grounding weight of a blanket. You would trade your entire history, every memory of your mother's voice, every drop of your remaining dignity, just to be teleported back into that warmth for a single heartbeat. But your feet are blocks of dead grey wood. They have been uninstalled from the motherboard. They refuse to execute the simplest command of retreat. The betrayal is total. Your lungs feel like they are being lined with powdered glass and rusted needles. With every shallow, shivering breath you draw into your collapsing chest. The paranoia that the crowd around, those architects in their suits and clean coats, are actually hunters, sent to harvest your organs or delete your remaining file, becomes a physical weight on your shoulder. It presses your spine into a curve of total, abject submission. You are crying, but the tears freeze on your cheeks before they can even reach the edge of the mask, turning into salt crusts that itch like fiberglass shards. You are a hostage trapped inside a biological suit that has stopped taking orders from its rightful owner. The architect is forced to watch the system crash in slow motion, helpless as the user.deleted protocol reaches 98% completion. You are standing in the middle of a crowded, uncaring matrix, a monument to a catastrophic system error, begging for a mercy that your own compromised brain has been programmed to ignore. The house is on fire, the exits are locked, and you are the one who gave the parasite the keys. The train finally screeches into the terminal, the doors sliding open with a hiss that sounds like the final exhale of a dying beast. A harsh, clinical, and unforgiving light pours into the car, exposing the true, sickening scale of the wreckage. You look at the horde of frozen shadows on the platform, and for the first time in this loop, you don't see them as victims. You see them as data points in a failed simulation. You see a mass system failure where the source code of humanity has been overwritten by industrial waste and the logic of the parasite. The visual rage of the morning reveals every brutal detail: the concrete-colored skin, the hollowed-out sockets where ambition used to reside, and the dirt-stained masks that have become the only faces these biological ghosts have left. And in that moment of absolute soul-crushing despair, at the very nadir of your existence, a spark of the original architect flickers back to life in the deepest, most encrypted sector of your mind. The architect wakes up, not the one who builds golden towers in the clouds, but the one who understands exactly how to dismantle a prison from the inside by identifying the one structural brick that holds the entire illusion together. You realize with a violent electric clarity that the synthetic ghost is just a script, a sophisticated but ultimately fragile piece of software that relies entirely on your own biological hardware to run its recursive loops. The paranoia, the vertical void, the agonizing sensation of phantom spiders crawling under your muscle fibers, it's all fake data. It's a simulation designed by a molecular predator to keep the host paralyzed while it consumes the motherboard. To break the loop, you don't just quit, you perform a hard manual reset of the entire operating system. You begin to manually overwrite the corrupted lines of code with the only thing the parasite cannot simulate, cannot predict, and cannot withstand: the raw, unadulterated will to survive. You start small, one bit of data at a time. You fight for control of your lungs. You take a deep, rhythmic breath, not the whimper of a victim, but the intentional inhalation of a predator reclaiming its territory. You regain the use of your right hand. You feel the agonizing, beautiful sting of returning circulation, the primal grounding of physical pain that proves you are still anchored to a reality outside of the chemical lie. You turn your back on the subway car, on the horde of frozen shadows, and on the neon orange promise of a peace that is actually a mass grave. Every heavy step you take away from the station is a territory won back from the virus in a brutal war of attrition. You walk back toward the city center, but you are no longer a part of the matrix that governs the herd. You see the skyscrapers not as monuments of power, but as empty shells. You see the people rushing to their morning shifts, not as mannequins, but as mirrors of your own internal struggle. The architect is wide awake now, and the empire he is rebuilding in the ashes of the old world isn't made of concrete, steel, or vanity. It's made of absolute clarity and unyielding building razor-sharp boundaries. You reach the heavy iron door of your apartment, you turn the key with a hand that finally belongs to you again, and as the bolt slides into place with a definitive metallic thud, you realize the forest didn't follow you home. The synthetic ghost has been quarantined. The system is rebooting in safe mode, clearing the cache of 1,000 chemical lies. Your new reality doesn't start with a synthetic forgery of happiness. It starts with the cold, hard and magnificent truth of your own reclaimed sovereignty. The loop is broken. The architect is back in control of the motherboard, and the new code is being written in blood and fire. The subway demon is dead. The architect is reborn.